Hello and welcome back to the second episode in this series I'm doing with Professor Janet Smith, really aimed at young women, old women, all women, men, all human beings, because it's about contraception and the way in which it's impacted us over the decades since it's been made available. And today, Janet, we want to focus, especially if you watched last week, you did an excellent job, Janet, of showing us how a woman's cycle works, about our own fertility and how the contraception suppresses that. And today we want to focus especially on how contraception affects relationships, male-female relationships. So that's going to be the focus of today's episode. But Janet, you wanted to maybe just begin with a quick review of last week.
Yes, I thought it might be wise for us because some people might come upon this one and not see the first one, or at least need some review of what we did last time. This slide shows it represents what's going on in a woman's fertility cycle. It says ovarian and menstrual cycle. Again, this is what about the hormones that are surging through a woman's body. As I mentioned last time, chemically, a woman is a different person every day of the month. She has a different set of hormones operating in her system. And it's important to understand that this affects every cell of her body. Even more importantly, it affects her brain, right? It affects the way that she looks upon the world, how she perceives the world, how she thinks of herself, how she thinks of other people, especially the males in her life. But let me just quickly show this. The bottom one is a picture of a drawing of a woman's endometrium. And the endometrium is the lining of her uterus that is preparing to receive a fertilized ovum, a new little human being that she may have conceived through an act of sexual intercourse. If she doesn't conceive, she has this, again, the bleeding that is the menstrual cycle, which is generally one day. This one has it ending around day 2 or 3, but I think most women go 3 or 4 days. And after the endometrium of the last month gets shed, her body starts building a whole new endometrium should she conceive in this month. And if she doesn't conceive, as this picture is of a woman's endometrium who does not conceive, again, it will slough off in the next month. What is making all of this happen are these two primary hormones. Estrogen, which is the red here, has a woman, it starts to build again, and as it's building, the endometrium is building, and that peaks this right before she ovulates. In this chart, women ovulate around day 11, 12, 13, 14. For different women, it's very different. It's very interesting. This cycle can be shorter or longer in respect to what hormones a particular woman has. Those hormones are produced by vitamins and minerals that are in a woman's body. All sorts of things can affect that. Her stress level can affect that. But virtually for every woman, from the time she ovulates to the beginning of her next menstrual cycle, it's 14 days, which is true just about across the board, unless a woman's having very severe hormonal irregularities. So at any rate, this estrogen produces this nice, rich endometrium. The progesterone is a hormone that kicks in order to keep the fertilized ovum embedded in the endometrium. So if a woman gets pregnant, she needs to have progesterone. And some women who are having trouble with fertility, they've conceived but they miscarried, they can get shots of progesterone to help them. They can get shots of progesterone to sustain the pregnancy. Again, if she doesn't conceive, both of those hormones will subside. The row above that is the developing ovum. A woman's born with all the eggs she's ever going to have, somewhere between 200,000, maybe a million. And every month, she ripens and releases one of those eggs. Sometimes the egg will split, sometimes it might be 2 eggs, but once she does ovulate, she doesn't ovulate again. she will not ever ovulate in the second half of the cycle. All right, there will no be second time. Now, this woman, the egg gets bigger and bigger until it's ripe for ovulate, for the sperm to that's not a sperm, but it's waiting for a sperm to fertilize it. If it doesn't, it moves into this luteal phase where it moves into a luteal phase, which means it's basically dying. All right, and again, it exudes different hormones that alert the body either to continue to produce the progesterone or not. She's either fertilized has a new human being grown within her, or does not. And these hormones at the top are the hormones that help the egg help the ovaries ripen and release an egg. All right. So what's important, as I said, as far as our topic for today, is how this affects a woman's relationships to the world, to other people, to herself, and I would say to a certain extent, most importantly, the man in her life or the men in her life. Right. So we can see that a woman's is not the same chemically every day of the month. This is the time of the month which he gets this surge of estrogen that she has the highest sexual desire, right? The same surge up here. And that's a very important thing. And if you're a believer in God, it's that God has basically made a woman's fertility cycle giving her a shove and saying, okay, go, and saying God's giving her a shove and saying, it's time for you to be very interested in sex because I want you to have babies, right? So we'll see that women, what the chemical birth control pills do are, and the shots, etc. What they do is that they flatten this all out. They, instead of having these surges of hormones, they put in a woman's body the hormones that she has when she's pregnant. And when she's pregnant, she doesn't have these surges of hormones. She doesn't ovulate. She doesn't need to ovulate. She's already pregnant. And so her body is busy nurturing the new little human being inside of her. So a woman who's on a chemical contraceptive is basically in a state of pseudo-pregnancy for the entire time that she is on that chemical contraceptive. The difference between a woman who is not pregnant and a woman who's pregnant in the way that they look at the world, look at themselves, look at men, is very different. And so we can expect a woman who's on a chemical contraceptive who's in a state of pseudo-pregnancy to be like neither one of those women, because she is not in a natural state. She is in an artificially created state of infertility. Right. So I'm going to come back and talk to you.
That's fascinating, Janet. And one of the things you said there at the beginning was that being a woman and this hormonal cycle affects every cell and affects her brain. And we're going to come in just a moment to focus on the male-female relationships and how contraception affects that. But it's just worth saying, and I want to say to many women watching, if you're not sure and if you're not aware, that one of the earliest moves in the feminist movement, one of the earliest things that Mary Wollstonecraft and the early feminists were trying to do was to separate women from what makes them women and say that they must be understood with an emphasis on human being and equate them with men. And so I think that was hundreds of years ago, and we're now hundreds of years later. And there's been this drip effect of trying to get us to understand ourselves as human being. It's not that we shouldn't understand ourselves as human being, because we are created in the image and likeness of God. And of course we are human, but we are distinctly human as women. And so I think that's been lost, that idea that actually being a woman is not something you can just dress up as. It's something that runs through and permeates every cell of our being. That's what's so important. And so obviously when we suppress that cycle that you've just spoken about, it's going to impact how we then as women relate to others. And that's what we're going to come to now, Janet, which is how does this contraception then affect male-female relationships?
Okay, yeah, excellent. I've been doing talks on this since like 1990 or so. It's a long time. Things have changed a lot in that time, meaning we we understand so much more about these hormones that are in a woman's body, how they affect her and how they affect their relationships. I had discovered a book in the in the mid 1990s. I'm sorry that's blurry, but this book it's called The Decline of Males by Lionel Tiger. And Lionel Tiger is an amazing scholar who was an anthropologist who studied animal behavior to explain human behavior. Of course, we have a huge animal um, aspect to our nature and our being. And he actually writes this book, The Decline of Males, is that how contraception has, in a certain sense, ruined males, all right? Because males, and there's another book that's very interesting by a man named George Gilder, and that book is entitled Sexual Suicide. And he really talks about females as, many people take offense at this, but as females, one of our jobs is to domesticate males. That males are kind of beastly. They want to have sex with many women. In one of the books I'm going to talk about, there's a chart that if men meet a woman and say, "Do you want to have a date?" Many of them respond positively. If he says, "You want to go to my apartment?" Many of the women don't want to go. And if he says right off the bat, "Do you want to have sex?" Virtually all the women say no. And virtually all the males, if asked by the woman, "Do you want to have sex?" or if she should say yes, they all want to have sex. All right. It's they're wired that way. They're wired, honestly, to simply want the pleasure of sex. And they need to learn that there's much more to sex than just the physical pleasure. And in George Gilder's Sexual Suicide, he talks about an amazing moment in a man's life when he realizes he wants a family, he wants children. And so he starts looking at women in a very different way. Instead of just looking for a sexual partner, he wants a life partner, one with whom he can build a family. And one will be a good mother to his children, their children, of course. And then he realizes in order to get that woman, he has to be a certain kind of man. He has to get a job, all right? He has to become responsible. He has to become faithful. That these are the things that women want in a man that they're going to marry. So Lionel Tiger talks about how contraception has greatly contributed to the decline of males, that they can have sex without any responsibility. They get used to that, and they never mature. They never mature to the state that says, I want a woman who will be a good life companion and be a good mother to our children. And I have to be a man who can support that woman and be a good father to these children. So I need to, again, mature. But what he has some amazing tests that he looked at that time. And they were coming out in the late 1990s about hormones. Now, men and women, maybe I'll leave this and come back to you, and then we'll look at the other slide when we get there. That men and women exchange hormones through the sense of smell. All right, they're called pheromones. Pheromones transfer hormones between men and women. And again, that when women are on the contraceptive pill, they don't have the usual hormones that women have. They don't have the fertile hormones. And fertile hormones actually make women extremely attractive to males. Men are much more attractive. There was one of the tests is what they call the T-shirt test, and they had men who wore T-shirts for a day. One was a group of men that they rated as evolutionarily desirable, meaning healthy, strong, aggressive, etc. And the others were basically loser couch potato types without motivation, etc. And the women, the females, the women never met the males, right? The males wore the T-shirts for only a day. At the end of the day, the women would smell the t-shirts, because again, women are very attracted to men on the basis of how the men smell to them, right? And so the women who were not contracepting chose as men that they would like to date and mate the men who were rated as evolutionarily desirable. And the women who were on the pill chose the unambitious male, the male that had no aggressiveness in his system. And I've heard mothers come up to me after my talk and they say that explains a lot. And I said, what does it explain? And they'll say, well, it explains why my daughter, who's on the pill, is drawn to that loser. All right. And the other one will say, it explains why my son, who's actually an excellent young man, a lot of interest in the world and ready to go out in charge, can't attract the women. I mean, it's amazing women talk now about toxic masculinity. And the real problem is that they think masculinity is toxic. But honestly, when women, again, not on the pill, run into a man that is, he's not domineering, but he is decisive. All right. He's not pushy, but he's got healthy ambition. He wants to do something with his life and make an impact on the world. All right. And so these are very attractive men. So, but the pill makes them, women are not so attracted to them, because when a woman is pregnant, she just wants someone safe. All right. Someone who is not sexually aggressive because she's pregnant already. All right. Someone who is not demanding, again, just more like a brother. So those are the men to whom women are attracted. Another so many fascinating tests. Another one was to show that men are more attracted to women when they're fertile. One test involved putting a bunch of males in a room and showing them slides of supermodels and needing to rate how attractive they were. And what they had in the room was something soaked with female fertile hormones. All right. No, excuse me. That's the second part of the text. When they showed them supermodels and just sort of ordinary women, nothing in the room, no female influence in the room, they found the supermodels very, very attractive. When they put something in the room that was filled with female sexual hormones, the men found ordinary women much more attractive than the supermodels. All right. So you have all these women, spending zillions of dollars on fitness and makeup and hair. And you say, you've got something in your system that by its very nature draws men. I got a long letter once from a man who had been overseas at a time when the United States women in the United States were taking contraceptives. And the women where he was, I think it was Czechoslovakia or something, weren't. And he said the women were so much more attractive. And he said, I finally figured it out. He said they were not taking contraceptive. I've seen it. I saw it as a professor at the University of Dallas, where the girls were largely not sexually active, and many of them dressed in a very nice feminine way. And they would get together. My office overlooked the quad, and so in between classes, you'd see all this interaction. And the women who were attractively dressed and I knew weren't taking contraceptive, they were virtual male magnets. All right, the men just loved to cluster around them and talk. Whereas the girl who was, another girl would walk down the mall. She was very suggestively, immodestly dressed, and I knew she had a reputation. And the good men, you could just see them averting their eyes. It was like, there's danger over there. There's beauty over here. There's attractiveness over here. So, I had my own little tests for these. At one of my talks, a man came up afterwards and he said, I like your talk, but listen, he said, we don't need all those tests. And I said, what do you mean you don't need all those tests? He says, well, we're in Kansas. He said, in Kansas, he said, we have cows and horses. And he said, I want you to know that, when a cow is not fertile, the bulls have no interest at all. He said, when she's fertile, he will knock down 3 fences over a mile to get to her. All right. He said, we know that the fertile hormones of a female are attractive to a male. So that's an extraordinary thing that women can test for themselves.
And don't you think also, Janet, that speaks to our removal from nature? We're so far removed from nature, many of us, and we're increasingly reliant on technology. And so therefore we're missing those things that are more obvious that we should be paying attention to because we're so distracted with technology. But what you were saying there I thought was very interesting. And already we can start to see from what you've said how contraception may impact male-female relationships, because of course if a woman who is suppressing her hormones such that her body is mimicking pregnancy, so she's choosing a certain type of partner, it's not beyond the wit of man to realize that if she then marries that partner, comes off contraception and decides to have a family, she may think differently and view her husband differently, and by that time they're married, and suddenly it's pointing towards complications in the relationship. So already from what you've said, I can see how contraception is going to then impact on marriages and increase divorce rates. And it has such a knock on. There's so much more to it, is what we're trying to highlight, than just go to the doctor, take a pill, have sex. There's so much more that surrounds this that's part of what we're trying to express. So thank you. That was brilliant.
Yeah, it's let me just draw in this other book for a minute here. As I said, things change. They've changed over the 35 years since I've been paying really almost obsessive attention to these things. And nothing makes me happier than when the modern world catches up to me. No, catches up with what stuff is out there already, and takes it beyond. It looks at more and more scientific studies. And I believe I mentioned this book last time by Sarah Hill, who I said she was an evolutionary biologist, but she's I hope this is the right phrase, an evolutionary psychologist, which is much more interesting, really. And she wrote this fascinating book, This Is Your Brain on Birth Control, The Surprising Science of Women, Hormones, and the Law of Unintended Consequences. As I mentioned last time, I'm done giving toasters or blenders or anything like that for wedding gifts. People are going to get books. And this is one of the books they're going to get. Now, I don't agree with Sarah Hill on everything. She starts her book by saying she was on the pill for 10 years and she doesn't regret it. I don't know if that, I mean, wouldn't want to accuse her of lying, but it seems to me that's an important thing for her to say, because she's not trying to say it's altogether wrong to take the birth control pill. She just wants to make certain women understand what we're doing. It's a beautifully written book. It's hilarious. It's well documented. It has great charts. Any woman is going to have a very hard time putting this book down. And she tells story after story of the kind that you just said, of women who are on the pill, they meet a man, they move in with him, and are with him for years, maybe marry him, go off the pill, and discover that they're not interested in him sexually. They weren't all that interested to begin with, because again, one thing, when I talked last time about the common side effects of the contraceptive pill, increased irritability, increased depression, weight gain, and I failed to mention a decreased desire in sexual intercourse. Because again, when a woman is pregnant, she doesn't have the same sexual drive because she's already pregnant. So her body does not desire to get pregnant. So that's a big part, is that those fertile hormones propel a woman into wanting to have sexual intercourse. So if she's on the pill, when she meets and marries a man, she may have chosen the same man had she not been on the pill, but it's also possible she might not have. And the story sometimes goes both ways, more often the way that I just mentioned. Some psychologists talk about the pill as the divorce pill, that when a woman goes off the pill, she discovers that she has a sexual drive because her fertile hormones are in operation, but she's not interested in the man she's with, right? How sad is that? There's a story of one woman who was on the pill living with a man, and she just had no interest in sex. So she broke up with him. She met him maybe a year later when she was not on the pill, and she found him powerfully attractive. Because when she was on the pill, again, she didn't have hormones that would make her sexually interested. And so she didn't know how attractive he was to her when she was not um, on the pill. So there's story after story in this book of women, and there's an incredible chart, which I didn't have time to get up. We might do it next time, but she has where it shows women's satisfaction with various elements of their relationship, whether they're on and off the pill. In many respects, the woman who on and off the pill, many features, his financial capabilities, his loyalty, his dependability, all of that are the same on and off the pill. But everything related to sex is much lower of satisfaction for the woman on the pill than a woman who's the same woman who's off the pill. Not just random women, but the same woman. So it's just a spectacularly interesting fact that most women and men are just totally unaware of.
Yes, so we can see far more clearly how these contraceptives impact male-female relationships in a negative way. Are you able to say anything about how managing your relationship using natural methods is actually draws you closer together and helps solidify that male-female relationship?
Yes, excellent question. Again, when women are on the pill, they simply have a reduced sexual desire. Women use natural family planning, which requires abstaining during the time of the month when she's fertile, still have a powerful sexual drive. Now, if she's decided not to, she and her husband, and I hope she and her husband in consultation with God, have decided it's not a good idea to have another child at this point, or a child at this point, they will abstain during a woman's fertile time. Now, again, that's a hardship on a woman because that is her the time of the month when she has the highest desire for sexual intercourse. But the point is, she at least has that now and then. A woman who's on a contraceptive pill can, again, be on it for 10 years and never have that, have completely forgotten. And the women who had this experience talk about it, that when they got off the pill, they feel like a whole different woman. They enjoy things that they had enjoyed before they went on the pill that they'd forgotten about. They just discover a whole new, beautiful response to the world. So it is a deprivation, but it's one that she remembers. She knows that she has this desire. And again, if when she is out of the fertile cycle, they do the things that are conducive to romance, whether it's music or dancing or wine or a date, a woman's interest can be aroused, right? The many important things about natural family planning are that it treats a woman's fertility as though it were a precious thing. And the woman herself, that we do not want to fill her body with chemicals so that she will be sexually available, all right? We don't want to do that to her body. And so her husband says, I can abstain. I can abstain for a certain period of the month. I love you, all right? And the women feel tremendously valued and respected. I have a man who values me for much more than my sexual availability. And I know if one man said that, he would go to work and his friends would kind of mock him for using NFP and abstaining. I guess you don't have much of a sex drive and all of this. And he says, who's more of a man? He said, me or you? He said, I can lie in bed at night with a woman I love, and I can refrain from having sexual intercourse because it's best. It's best for the both of us and our family.
Mm.
And he says, how do you think our marriage is? He said, what do you think our marriage is like? She feels so esteemed, and I feel esteemed because she looks at me and she says, I'm not just a sexual monster. I'm not just someone who expects her to meet my sexual needs. It's a joint thing. Sometimes she's pressed by sexual desire that we can't satisfy, or I am that we can't because where she is in her cycle. But we love each other. So we can do other things. We can go for a walk. We can watch a movie we want. And this is what couples will say, is that with NFP, they actually discover they enjoy each other's company besides having sexual intercourse. There's many further things, but one is communication. People say, what is that all about? You say, well, people who use natural family planning are going to come to that part of the month where, say, a woman really wants to have sexual intercourse. And he does too, because he finds her more attractive during that time. So what do? They talk about, why are we abstaining? Why is it not a good idea to have a child right now? Let's review that, And the review almost always excavates, you want to say, some very interesting things in the relationship. She might say, well, the reason we decided not to have any children right now is because, I'm tired. I've got 3 under 5, and you said you'd help. You'd say on Saturday mornings I could go out and shop without taking the kids, and you said you'd give them baths every night. When was the last time you gave them the bath? When was the last time that I had a Saturday morning? And he goes, woo, I'm doing baths tonight. Okay, Saturday, you go. Or he might say, the reason we decided is because I'm just too financially stressed. He said, your friend Jane gets a new kitchen. You need a new kitchen. Your friend Jane wants a fence around the property. We need to do it. He said, I'm just worn out. And I can't handle all your demands. And she says, forget the kitchen, forget the fence. I had no idea it was causing so much. So that kind of communication just really, people who contracept, again, can go for years without asking, why did we decide not to have any more children? All right, which is a huge decision. And they put it on hold. Whereas the couple who are contracepting, it's always in their mind, sex leads to babies. Are we prepared for another baby? And when people say, well, couples using NFP seem to have a lot of babies, and you say, yeah, because it's amazing how human beings say yes to that. We'd like to have another baby. We'd love to have another little one around the table. Our children now would like another one. And so many of my friends say that, they differ on whether sort of 2 or 3 is the tipping point. But they sort of like, number 1 is catastrophic. That your life is never your own again in the way it was pre-baby. Never. 24 hours a day, someone who's totally dependent upon you. Going in and out of the house is just an act of physical stamina, the things you have to carry and put in the car and out of the car and try to plan ahead of time and think. But of course, you've never had more fun in your whole life. You've never had more laughter, more love, more smiles. You and your husband are just over the moon about this baby. The family is. People in the street stop you and they love your child. And it's just incredible. You're tired out of your mind, but it's just unbelievable. It depends on when you have number 2, but usually when you have number 2, it's almost equally catastrophic, though now you know a little bit more about how to take care of a baby. But now you've got 2. 2 demanding your attention over here, over there. It's just, again, whew. But again, their interaction, etc. Too much fun. But some people say it's too much work. We're going to stop now. Now, people tell me that when number 3 and number 4 and number 5 and however many come, it just doesn't make a lot of difference. You've reached a level of chaos from which you will never recover. All right, never. And then, but watching their interaction, watching them grow, noticing how this one's different from that one, learning their skills, etc. What's more interesting and more fun? And so people stop. They stop when this is too much, and they look at people who have 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I'd love to do that, but I just can't. So we couldn't either until we did it.
Yeah.
Neither until we did it. And so NFP makes you revisit that in a way that contraception doesn't. After 2, she'll get a tubal, he'll get a vasectomy, and you just go on with life and you don't think. And you might kind of envy those people over there that have their whole little flock following them, seeming to have so much fun with each other. And you said, I mean, my parents had six, and uh, my my dad said he always wanted four, and my mother wanted two, so they both got what they wanted. All right, but and I think I mentioned last time. He said the one thing I regret is not having had more children. He said it was the most fun and meaningful thing I've ever done in my life. He said, why would I want to limit that? It was hard. We had very little money when we were young. We weren't poor. We were lower middle class for sure. But I don't remember it as anything but fun. Anything but, taking out boxes on a hill and just sliding down on the boxes in our pajamas in the summertime. That's really one of my most lovely memories of my childhood. Someone had to, I think it was even an emergency room, run to the hospital. So we were already in our pajamas. My parents dropped us off at some friend's house, and they had a little hill by the side of their house. And so we took these cardboard boxes and slid down the hill. It's one of my favorite memories. Not Disneyland, not anything but that.
It's interesting. Our precious memories are always about the time we spent with others and not the things we had when it comes down to it. Well, you heard it here, hopefully not first, from Professor Janet Smith, that sex can lead to babies. So hopefully that's not news to anybody. But to pick up on just a couple of things you said there that I think are so important and want to just mention is the communication aspect. I remember speaking with a couple who had 9 children, and they said, the husband helped the woman also in terms of tracking her ovulation and her looking at her temperature, measuring her temperature, and so he was involved, and it brought them closer because they were involved in the process together. And Jordan Peterson, I think, says something like, I remember it shocked me when I heard it, because he's a psychologist as well. He said something like the average married couple speak to each other for no more than 16, I'm pretty sure it was 16 minutes a week. 16 minutes a week, a husband and a wife. And just that alone, that shift to a natural family planning, and you've just given a perfect example of how that then leads to conversations about your life together, your domestic situation, about your family. It might even lead to a bit of, a little bit of arguing about something, but at least it's being discussed. It's not being ignored. So I think communication is absolutely brilliant, and something we must not ignore in terms of planning your fertility together naturally as a couple. And the other thing you said, that man that you spoke about said, people said to him, "You're not much of a man." And he said, "Who's more of a man?" I love that. Exactly. Who is more of a man? The man that can sacrifice and love his wife and go without for love of her. Because we have this thing, I think, in certainly people of my age and younger, there was always this idea, and I hear it amongst teenagers in schools, where they say they have this sense that being a man is about conquering women. If I can conquer as many women as I can. And you kind of say, is that difficult? And they look a bit puzzled, and then they honestly say, not really. They realise that it's just easy. It's just this generation, you want something, you order it, it's here within 24 hours. You want to eat something, you go to the fridge and you take it. You want to have sex with a woman, go and conquer her. Does it call anything from you? Does it help you to grow as a man, as a human being, to be better than you are? No, it doesn't. It's just easy. And we're just recording this a week after Harrison Butker spoke at Benedictine College, and he was vilified for it. But when you look at him, here's a strong, tough, masculine man who is the best he can be in his field, and who has learned the art of sacrifice and hard work and growing in virtue. And he's also a man who choked up when he spoke about how much he loved his wife and how grateful he is for her. And you look at that and you say, are you telling me that isn't a real man who can offer a woman something and who can offer a family something, compared to some bloke who can get his clothes off and have sex with you and be done with you in 5 minutes? So I think that was a really, really powerful point to make. It's not the case that you're a wimp and you're less masculine. The opposite is true. You're more masculine if you're able to manage this with your wife in a relationship. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I think in a certain sense, deep down, basically know that. I mean, men know that it's important to get control. You're more masculine when you have control over yourself, all right? Where you're not driven by all of your passions and desires. Even the men, obviously who work out all the time, that's hard to do. It's hard to discipline yourself to go and do that. And they certainly love the way their bodies look, but they also love the fact that they had the discipline to do this. They have more control over themselves. I mean, Harrison Butker is just, he's all those things, and he's gorgeous. He could have any woman he wanted. All right. There's just no question. But he doesn't want any woman. He doesn't want any woman. And when you get right down to it, he wants that woman. And he wants to do whatever it takes to get and keep that woman. Right. And I don't know anything about her, but I am pretty confident that she's an incredibly high quality woman. All right. And often men will see a maybe an exceptionally beautiful woman or someone who's somewhat more attractive than others, and she's with a man that doesn't seem that attractive, right? And on some scale of muscularity and all of this. But I know in my group of friends that all their husbands are attractive, but let's say every now and then might be a little bit of disparity, and you would say this woman could have gotten a man that was more built or something, but she wanted this man because he's responsible and he's faithful and he can provide for the family, and she basically adores him. And so both men and women are capable of seeing way past the physical presentation. And it's not that that's not important, but what's way more important, honestly, than beauty or handsomeness, honestly, are these hormones. They have these, speed dating things now. And again, I'd be very interested. And our Catholic, our diocese is doing that with unmarried, obviously, men and women. And I believe that most of the women are not contracepting. And this is turning out to be a very interesting exercise because it doesn't take long to sort of say, I'm interested or not interested. That's not infallible, the immediate thing, but it's a starting place. Excuse me. John Paul II used to speak about the sexual attraction as John Paul II, in his book Love and Responsibility, talks about the sexual attraction as being the raw material of love. It's a wonderful phrase. Yes, the sexual attraction is extremely important. It's not unimportant, but when you come into a room and you're single, and you pretty quickly can sort of pick out one or the other that you're more attracted to, and you might go talk to that person. You might find out that they're a soft-brained liberal who has a horrible cackling laugh, and you say, whoa, the external appearance and the reality are too far apart for me. And so you sort of find another person you talk, and someone you might start talking to initially, you might not have had that initial attraction, but as you get to, you say, oh my goodness, we share so many interests. This person really does have beautiful eyes and does have a lovely smile, and oh my goodness. All right, so as the sexual attraction, either it can be like that or it can come somewhat more gradually. He says, don't waste it. He said, don't waste it. Get to know the person. Figure out if you do have things in common. And he always says he says very clearly, the deal breaker is, do I want this person to be the mother or father of my children? Right? Huge, huge question. And so you say, and if you're saying, yeah, I find this person very attractive, but he's an irresponsible ne'er-do-well. Same with her. She might be extremely attractive, but really all she wants is my money. And I'm kind of handsome, and she wants arm candy. All right. And so you say, no, there's lots going here, but it's not enough. The really important thing is, could we be good parents together? It doesn't mean you have to be at the perfection of generosity and self-sacrifice and everything, but you notice how they play with children, how they respond to children, what their relationship is to our parents and siblings and maybe nieces and nephews. and in fact, I think parents should do this from day one with their kids. They should always be pointing out someone. You see how that little boy plays with his sister? I think he's going to make someone a wonderful husband someday. Do you see how how hospitable she is, how generous she is? I think someday she'll make someone a wonderful wife. And you have to get it in their heads. Oh, she's so pretty. The man who gets her is going to be so lucky. Well, okay. But without this other stuff, you're setting a shallow standard for your children rather than something that is more meaningful.
Mm. Again,
So,
Janet, some fantastic nuggets there that we can tell. That's why I love having you on, is you're so full of wisdom, and you just say these things and I think, yes, this is what we need to hear. We sat around the other day, our family were all together, and they're not always, because the older children are left home, but we were all together, and the children all started talking about how many kids they want, even the youngest, the 15-year-old boy and the 13-year-old girl. And I thought, I wanted to capture the moment. It was so precious. I suddenly realized we needed to take out a massive loan, because they were saying, I want 5 kids, and I want 6 kids, and I want 4 kids, but every single one of the children, the 5 children, said they wanted to get married and have children. And we worked out in the end, I think, that if things went the way they wanted, we'd have 27 grandchildren. But I think you're so right to speak of those things. We spend so much time speaking with our children about, you've got to get these grades and try and get into this university and try and succeed in this way, and maybe you could own this brand of car. And that's great. It's good to have those conversations. But you're quite right. Again, such a brilliant piece of information that I think is to take away for all of you watching. Let's make sure that we factor in that time with our families, with our own children, to speak to them about marriage as a normal thing, about having children as a thing that we would expect and that is a normal and valuable and beautiful thing. I think that's so important, Janet. Thank you for mentioning that.
yeah, I had really wonderful parents. I wouldn't say they had the best parenting techniques. I see many better ones now. I think there's been real improvement in things. Both my parents, you might say now, would be considered harsh. We found both of them incredibly loving. And, I was only looking back. I said, well, I guess that would be considered harsh, but I knew it was done out of love. But I always said my dad practiced the mode of parenting called, selective ranting and raving, and he would teach us, again, not sit us down and talk to us, but we'd be in a car. And I remember this one so vividly, that we're driving down the street and he sees an immodestly clad young woman. And he says this, he says, where is that girl's father? He said, no father who really loved his daughter would let her go out dressed like this. And we're listening. We said, well, there's no point in challenging dad on that. We already know the policy. Or there'd be a man, being an usher at mass doing the collection. And later my dad, this isn't, there's a little bit of sin in this for sure, but dad would say things like, who does he think he's fooling? Everybody knows he's cheating on his wife. What does he think he's gaining by parading at church like he's a good Catholic? And again, I remember saying, what happened there? He said he's told a lie to his wife about where he was. He said, you tell the first lie, you're going to say the second lie. He says, don't ever tell the first lie. I remember these little, as you say, nuggets of conversations that he didn't have to do much. I adored my father and I wanted his approval. And so that if he said something was bad, I knew it was bad because I loved him. Now, my mother was what I call stream of consciousness. Hers was just like, just constantly talking. She constantly talked, and we'd be, making breakfast, and I'd be buttering bread, and she said, now this is for your father. And so you want to get every corner, because he likes butter on every corner, the whole thing. And I remember when I was a teenager being very sort of belligerent, like, well, what the heck? He can butter his own bread if that's what he wants. My mother's like, what are you saying? He provides for us. He does this, he does that. And I remember the day that I made a meringue for a banana cream pie with meringue on top, because my dad's favorite. Again, it's one of my favorite memories ever. He loved it. I pleased my father. by making a banana cream pie. And so that's what my mother always did. And so it was, you got this feeling that what was really important in life is doting on and pleasing those that you love and care for you. And so these lessons by chatter and example were so phenomenal. And now it's like some people say, well, I don't want to impose my views on my kids, or, I don't want to sound judgmental, and I want to like make them let them make up their own minds. I want to say again, I just thought I learned so much in this casual way with parents, and they don't need to sit down and give lessons. They need to just constantly give lessons in indirect ways.
Yeah, exactly. It's just living those relationships. And when young people are in networks rather than in communities and families, it becomes very appealing, I think, to just be in family relationships, family dynamics, seeing people serve one another, seeing people sacrifice for one another and not give up. That's going to be crucial. Like you say, it doesn't have to be intentional lessons. Sit down between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. I'm going to teach you this lesson. We just imbibe it in the way that our parents who love and sacrifice for one another and love their children, and make mistakes and argue and get things wrong, and they're not perfect, but they persevere. I think that's exactly true. That's how we can, and listen to you now telling us of those beautiful memories. I think it's so wonderful to hear you speak in that way. Thank you. Well, so we've discussed relationships today in terms of contraception, but we'll be back next week with our third episode in the series, where we'll be focusing, won't we, Janet, on something that seems very dear to the hearts of many people today, which is concern for the environment. And it may be something that people haven't really connected before, with our concern for environmental issues, is exactly how damaging contraception can be to the environment. So I'll be talking with you next week about that, and no doubt some other things and some wonderful stories yet to come. But for now, thank you very much for joining us, and do please visit the website catholicunscripted.com, and in the notes of this video you will also find a link to the 2 books that Janet has mentioned here. Thank you for watching. I'm Catherine Bennett.
Thank you.